What would you do if you saw someone every day but never spoke to them? Would you stay silent forever, or would you take the risk to say hello? This is my story. My name is Sophia, and I was 19 years old when it all began. I lived with my aunt in a modest apartment in London. The building was tall but plain, painted in soft grey with windows lined up neatly like squares on a chessboard. Our flat was on the 3rd floor, and from my room I could see across to another building opposite ours. It wasn't anything special, just another block of flats, but it was here, from my small balcony, that something unusual started. I loved my balcony. Most evenings I would step outside with a cup of tea, lean against the cold railings, and just watch the world below. The street was always alive with voices, laughter, the sound of buses braking, or the occasional siren rushing past. I liked to imagine stories about the strangers I saw, where they were going, who they loved, what secrets they carried. In a city as large as London, I felt like a tiny part of a giant story. One summer evening, I went out as usual. The sun was setting, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink. While I sipped my tea, my eyes wandered to the opposite building, and that was the first time I noticed him. He was standing on his balcony, about the same height as mine but across the narrow street. He looked my age, perhaps a little older. His hair was dark and fell forward slightly as though it hadn't been brushed carefully. He had a book in his hand, though I could see he wasn't reading it. He was gazing at the street just like me. For a few seconds, our eyes met. My heart gave a strange jump, and I quickly looked away, pretending to be interested in the pigeons on the roof. I told myself it was nothing. Just a neighbor. But deep inside, I knew I had noticed him in a way I didn't usually notice strangers. The next day, it happened again. He was there, leaning on the rail with a notebook. His pen moved quickly, as though he was writing something important. Then, suddenly, he lifted his head and looked directly at me. Our eyes met once more. I felt my cheeks heat up, but this time I didn't run. I held his gaze for a moment before turning inside. My heart was beating faster than usual, and I didn't understand why. Over the next few weeks, I saw him often. I learned small things about him just by watching. He liked to read in the evenings, sometimes with music playing in his earphones. He laughed quietly when something on his phone amused him. He didn't seem to have many visitors, and I never saw him rushing anywhere. There was a calmness about him that drew me in. Without realizing it, I began to wait for the moments when he would appear on his balcony. One Sunday morning, I was watering the little plant my aunt had given me when he stepped outside. The street was unusually quiet, with only a few cars passing. He looked across, and this time he smiled. A small, gentle smile. I froze, my hand still holding the jug of water. For a long moment, I didn't know what to do. Then, awkwardly, I smiled back. It wasn't much, but it was enough to change something between us. That evening, I told my cousin Holly about him. She was 2 years older than me, confident and always laughing. When I admitted that I'd been watching a boy across the street, she burst into giggles. "Why don't you just say hello?" she teased. I shook my head. It feels strange. I don't even know his name. What if he thinks I'm silly? Holly nudged me. "You'll never know unless you try." Her words stayed with me. The next evening, I promised myself I'd speak to him. I practiced in my head, maybe I'd say hi, how are you? Or just a simple hello. But when the time came and he appeared, all I managed was a nervous little wave. My throat tightened, and the words never came out. To my surprise, he waved back. My face burned, but inside I felt light, almost proud. It was such a small thing, but it meant the world to me. Our silent exchanges grew over time. Sometimes he waved first, sometimes I did. Sometimes we just smiled, and once or twice I caught him laughing quietly when I spilled water on myself while watering the plant. It felt like we were speaking without words. A secret connection formed, delicate but real. Still, I longed to know his name. I wanted to hear his voice, even just once. One Friday afternoon, Holly and I went out to buy groceries. As we returned, she grabbed my arm and whispered, "Look." I followed her gaze and nearly dropped my bag. There he was, walking just a few steps ahead of us on the street. My heart pounded. He carried a small bag and looked serious, his eyes focused on the pavement. "This is your chance," Holly hissed. "Say something." I wanted to. Truly, I did. But my feet moved faster than my courage. When he turned into the entrance of his building, I remained silent. The chance slipped away. That night, I sat on my balcony feeling frustrated. Why was I so afraid? He was just a boy, not a monster. If I stayed quiet forever, I might regret it. I told myself I would be brave next time. I didn't know what would happen, but I knew I wanted to try. The next morning, his balcony was empty. I felt a little disappointed, but I didn't give up. That evening, when the sky turned pink and orange, he finally appeared. His hair was messy, and he looked like he had been studying all day. He leaned on the railing and looked straight at me. I lifted my hand in a wave. He smiled and waved too. My heart beat wildly, but this time I forced myself to be brave. I opened my mouth and whispered, "Hello." For a second, silence hung between us. Then, to my relief, his expression softened. He called back, his voice gentle, "Hi." Just one word, but it felt like the start of something beautiful. From that day, things changed. We began to exchange short greetings across the street. "Good morning." "How are you?" "Nice weather today." Simple words, but they built a bridge between us. Each evening, I looked forward to hearing his voice. I learned that his name was Daniel, and he was studying architecture at university. He told me he liked drawing buildings, and sometimes I saw him sketching late into the night. I shared little things too, how I loved reading novels, how I sometimes helped my aunt at the bakery where she worked, how I dreamed of traveling one day. He listened with interest, even from a distance. Our conversations were never long, but they were honest. One evening, when the street was quiet, Daniel leaned forward and asked, "Would you like to meet properly? Maybe at the cafe on the corner?" My heart leapt. After weeks of watching, smiling, and waiting, the moment had finally come. I smiled back and said softly, "Yes." And that is how a wave across a balcony turned into a hello, and a hello turned into something more. Sometimes in life, the smallest risks, just a smile, just a word, can change everything.